My child, listen carefully. Because this is not just another story. This is the moment your soul was meant to hear, the truth that has been unfolding behind closed doors while you thought everything was over, while you convinced yourself that they chose someone else and that was the end. But what if I told you that the vows they took, the promises they spoke, the smiles they showed to the world, none of it matched what their heart was screaming inside? Because while their lips said, "I do," something deeper, something uncontrollable, something that refuses to obey logic, was whispering your name over and over again, like a haunting echo they couldn't silence no matter how hard they tried. And this didn't start after the wedding. No, it began long before that day, in the quiet moments when they sat alone, staring at nothing, pretending to move forward while feeling pulled backward by a connection they couldn't explain. They tried to convince themselves it was just memory, just attachment, just a phase that would pass. But every time they imagined a future without you, something inside them tightened, something felt off, like they were walking into a life that didn't belong to them. And yet, pressure, expectations, timing, circumstances, all of it pushed them forward, step by step, until they found themselves standing at that altar, surrounded by people, noise, celebration. But inside, there was a storm. A conflict so intense that even they couldn't understand it. Because how do you explain smiling on the outside while your heart is resisting on the inside? How do you explain holding someone's hand while feeling the absence of another? How do you explain saying forever when a part of you already feels incomplete? And that's exactly what happened. They took those vows, they completed the rituals, they followed through with everything that was expected of them. But their heart didn't agree, not fully, not honestly. It stayed divided, caught between what is and what was. Between the life they chose and the love they couldn't erase. And the strangest part is, they thought it would end there. They believed that once the wedding was done, reality would settle in, feelings would fade, and everything would fall into place. But instead, the opposite happened. The silence after the celebration became louder than the noise before it, the absence of you became heavier than your presence ever was, and the life they stepped into started to feel like something they were living, but not truly feeling. Because you were never just a person in their life. You were an experience, a connection that rewired something deep within them, something that doesn't just disappear because circumstances changed. And now, they find themselves in moments where everything looks perfect from the outside, but inside, there's a question they can't shake. Why does it still feel like something is missing? And every time that question arises, it leads back to you, to memories they didn't plan to revisit, to emotions they thought they had buried, to a version of themselves that only existed when you were part of their world. And this is where it gets even more intense. Because they are not just remembering you. They are comparing, consciously or unconsciously, every interaction, every feeling, every moment. And realizing that something about you was different, something about you felt real in a way they can't recreate. And that realization doesn't bring peace. It brings conflict, guilt, confusion. Because now they are living a life where their heart is not fully aligned, where their emotions don't completely match their reality. And no matter how much they try to focus on what they have, there are moments where their mind drifts back to what they lost. To you. And these moments are not random. They are triggered by the smallest things: a song, a place, a word, a feeling. Anything that reminds them of the connection you shared. And suddenly, they are no longer present in their current life. They are somewhere else, somewhere in the past, reliving something that felt more true than what they are experiencing now. And this is not something they can easily talk about, not something they can openly admit, because from the outside, everything looks settled, everything looks decided. But inside, there is a part of them that never fully agreed with the path they took. A part of them that is still questioning, still wondering, still feeling. And the more time passes, the harder it becomes to ignore. Because suppressed emotions don't disappear. They grow, they evolve, they find ways to surface when you least expect it. And for them, those emotions are tied to you, to the connection that didn't get closure, to the story that feels unfinished. And this is why, even after everything, even after the vows, the commitment, the new life, your presence still exists within them, not physically, but emotionally, energetically, in a way that doesn't follow rules or timelines. And you might be sitting there thinking, if this is true, then why did they go through with it? And the answer is not simple, it's layered, it's human. Sometimes people make choices based on what feels right in the moment, or what seems logical, or what aligns with external expectations. But the heart doesn't always follow those choices. The heart operates on a different frequency, one that doesn't care about timing or practicality. It holds on to what it knows, what it felt, what it connected with on a deeper level. And in their case, that connection was with you. And now, they are living the consequence of a choice that their heart didn't fully support. And that doesn't mean they regret everything. But it does mean there is a part of them that feels incomplete, a part that wonders, what if? A part that still feels pulled towards you in ways they can't explain. And this pull is not always loud, sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it shows up as a thought, a feeling, a memory. But it's consistent, it's there, it hasn't disappeared. And that's because what you shared was not something ordinary, not something that can be easily replaced or forgotten. It was something that left an imprint, something that became a part of them. And now, they are navigating a life where that imprint still exists, still influences their emotions, still shapes their thoughts. And the more they try to ignore it, the more noticeable it becomes. Because truth has a way of surfacing, especially when it's been suppressed. And their truth is this. They took vows with someone else. But their heart didn't fully agree. Their heart is still carrying something unfinished, something unresolved, something connected to you. And whether they admit it or not, whether they act on it or not, whether they understand it or not, that connection is still there, still alive in ways that don't need validation from the outside. And the real question is not whether they feel it. The real question is what happens next, because feelings like this don't just stay quiet forever. They evolve, they demand attention, they push for clarity. And sooner or later, they will have to face what their heart has been trying to tell them all along. That despite everything that has happened, despite the choices, the vows, the life they stepped into, there is a part of them that never truly moved on from you. And that part is not weak. It's not confused. It's simply honest. Honest about a connection that didn't end the way it was supposed to. Honest about emotions that didn't fade the way they expected. Honest about a truth that they can no longer fully ignore. And when that moment of realization fully hits them, when they stop running from it, when they finally sit with it without distraction, everything will become clear in a way it never has before. Because deep down, they already know. They just haven't allowed themselves to fully accept it yet. But that moment is coming. And when it does, it will change everything, and the moment that realization begins to settle in. It doesn't come like a sudden explosion, it comes slowly, quietly, almost unnoticeably at first, like a thought that lingers a little longer than it should, like a feeling that refuses to fade even when everything around them is telling them it should, and this is where things start to shift inside them in a way they didn't expect, because now it's no longer just about memories or nostalgia, now it becomes awareness, a deeper understanding that what they are feeling is not temporary, not something they can just brush off and move past. It becomes something real, something present, something that starts to influence the way they see everything around them, and suddenly the life they stepped into doesn't feel as solid as it once did, not because it's falling apart on the outside, but because inside, there is a growing distance between what they are living and what they are truly feeling. And that distance becomes harder to ignore with each passing day, because every interaction, every routine, every moment that is supposed to feel natural begins to feel slightly off, like something is missing that they can't quite replace, and no matter how much they try to focus on what they have, their mind keeps drifting back to you, not in a forced way, not because they want to create confusion, but because something within them naturally pulls in that direction, something that doesn't ask for permission, something that simply exists. And this is where the conflict deepens, because now they are not just dealing with hidden emotions, they are dealing with the awareness of those emotions, and awareness changes everything, because once you recognize a truth, you can't unsee it, you can't unknow it, you can't pretend it doesn't exist, and they start realizing that what they felt for you was not something ordinary, not something that can be replaced by circumstance or timing. It was something that became a part of their identity, something that shaped how they experience connection, how they feel closeness, how they define what is real and what is not, and now they find themselves comparing without even trying, noticing differences they didn't notice before, feeling gaps they didn't expect to feel, and questioning things they thought were already decided. And this questioning doesn't come with easy answers, it comes with more emotions, more confusion, more internal tension, because on one side there is the life they chose, the commitments they made, the path they are currently on, and on the other side there is a connection that still feels alive, still feels unfinished, still feels like something they didn't fully let go of, and balancing these two realities becomes exhausting, because no matter which side they focus on, the other one doesn't disappear, it stays there, quietly present, waiting to be acknowledged. And this creates moments where they feel disconnected from everything around them, moments where they are physically present but emotionally elsewhere, moments where they are surrounded by people but still feel alone, because the one person who made them feel understood on a deeper level is not there, and that absence becomes more noticeable the more they try to ignore it, because absence has a way of becoming louder when it's not addressed, and in those quiet moments, when there are no distractions, no expectations, no roles to play, that's when it hits them the hardest. The realization that something inside them never fully moved on, that despite everything they did to move forward, a part of them stayed behind with you, and this is not something they can easily fix, not something they can simply decide to change, because emotions don't work that way. They don't follow logic. They don't obey decisions. They follow truth. And their truth is still connected to you in ways they are only now beginning to fully understand, and this understanding brings a mix of emotions, not just longing, but also regret, not necessarily regret for what they have, but regret for what they didn't fully explore, for what they didn't fully express, for the way things ended without true closure, and that lack of closure becomes a constant echo in their mind, a question that doesn't have a clear answer, a feeling that doesn't have a clear resolution, and the more they sit with it, the more they realize that this is not something that will simply fade with time, because time doesn't erase what was deeply felt, it only changes how it is experienced. And for them, it's becoming more present, more clear, more undeniable, and this is where things begin to reach a turning point, not externally, but internally, because now they have to decide how to deal with this truth, whether to continue suppressing it, continuing to live in a way that doesn't fully align with what they feel, or to start acknowledging it, to start facing it, to start understanding what it really means. And neither option is easy, because both come with consequences, both require courage, both demand honesty, and this is why they feel stuck, not because they don't know what they feel, but because they do know, and that knowing creates a responsibility, a need to eventually confront it, to eventually make sense of it, and until they do, this inner conflict will continue, this quiet tension will remain. This pull towards you will not disappear, it will only grow stronger, more defined, more impossible to ignore, because truth has a way of demanding recognition, especially when it has been hidden for too long, and their truth is this: they may have taken vows with someone else. They may be living a life that looks complete from the outside, but inside, there is a part of them that is still searching, still feeling, still connected to something that didn't end the way it was supposed to, and that something is you. And the more they try to move forward without addressing it, the more it follows them, not as a burden, but as an unfinished story, as a piece of their reality that is still waiting to be understood, and sooner or later, they will reach a point where ignoring it is no longer an option, where the need for clarity becomes stronger than the fear of facing it, where the truth becomes louder than the life they are trying to maintain, and when that moment comes, when they finally allow themselves to fully feel what they have been holding back, everything will begin to shift in a way that cannot be reversed, because once the heart speaks clearly, once the truth is fully acknowledged, there is no going back to pretending, there is no going back to ignoring what has already been realized, and that is the moment where everything changes, not just for them, but for everything connected to this story, because a truth like this doesn't stay hidden forever. It always finds a way to come to the surface. And when it does, it doesn't ask for permission, it simply reveals itself, completely, undeniably, and changes everything in its path. This is where everything reaches its breaking point. Not outside, but deep within them, where silence turns into truth and truth refuses to stay hidden any longer. Because now they can't escape it, they can't distract themselves from it, they can't pretend that everything is fine when something inside them keeps calling your name in the quietest moments. They start realizing that no matter how perfect things look on the surface, their heart has been living a completely different reality underneath it all. And that realization doesn't bring peace. It brings intensity. It brings a pull so strong that it begins to shake the very foundation of the life they tried to build without you. They begin to see clearly that what they felt for you was never temporary, never replaceable, never something that could be silenced by vows or time or distance. It was real in a way that changed them, marked them, and stayed with them no matter where they went or who they stood beside. And now, every attempt to ignore it only makes it louder, every effort to move on only brings them back to the same truth they tried to avoid. Because deep down, they know. Their heart made a choice long before their actions ever did. And that choice was you. This is the moment where denial starts to collapse and honesty begins to rise. Even if it scares them, even if it complicates everything. They start questioning everything they once believed was right, because it no longer feels aligned with what their soul is experiencing. And the more they question, the more one truth becomes impossible to ignore. You were never just a chapter, you were the story they never finished. That unfinished story now lives inside them, growing stronger, clearer, more demanding with every passing day. And no matter how much time passes, it refuses to fade, because it was never meant to disappear in the first place. It was meant to be understood, faced, and eventually completed. This is why they feel restless. Why they feel pulled, why they feel something shifting that they can no longer control. Because the heart doesn't follow timelines. It follows truth. And their truth has been quietly leading them back to you all along. The question is no longer if they will face it. The question is when. And when that moment finally arrives, nothing will remain the same again.